Hi everyone and welcome to my Unfiltered 20s.
A podcast about the ups and downs, highs and lows and realities of life in your 20s.
By me, Abbey Parker.
And me, Lucy Martin.
This is our 10th episode. Woo! So thanks for everyone who's been listening to us for the past few months. We really appreciate it.
So this week we have our first special guest in a very long time. We're joined by James Palmer, who is the editor of the Boar Film section and also a resident vegan expert. So we're going to be talking a lot about vegan, vegetarianism, what's been going on in the news, as well as everything we've been enjoying this week. James, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi everyone, I'm James. I'm very happy to be here for the 10th episode to mark the occasion. I've been listening to this podcast pretty much, I think, since the second week, just because, mainly because at first I thought Lucy would appreciate the feedback, and then actually I didn't expect to get into a lifestyle podcast, but, you know, well done guys. The hair care episode especially was the one where I was actually surprised about how invested I was in it. And since then, my girlfriend's introduced me to the wonderful world of Superdrug and the various shampoos and conditioners there specifically for the curly hair that I have. And so yeah, it's nice. I suppose she was the resident expert for me in that sense, but yeah, it's nice to actually finally have hair that doesn't look like that of a tramp. Yeah. And
we love the support.
Yeah.
As said, I'm the editor of the Boar Film, currently the section editor there. I suppose I don't really do that much else really with my life apart from, I suppose, at the moment I'm doing my maths and philosophy degree and focusing on that and reading a lot into kind of data and AI recently. So the news today about the COVID restrictions, I thought from that data standpoint was something that inspired a few strong opinions on my end, but I'll save those for later if we talk about that.
I think, Abby, aren't you looking into... I mean, I don't know anything about, like, techie stuff, but I feel like the masters you're looking into are sort of, like, a bit AI-y, aren't they?
Well, yeah, there's this masters at UCL called Human Computer Interaction, and I'm like, that's right up my street. I love that. Because there's this module I'm doing at the moment, which is like about, it's called Exploring Minds, but it's like AI minds and stuff. And it's really interesting looking at just, I mean, it's kind of scary though, everything that can go wrong. But yeah, interesting stuff.
Would that be neural networks specifically? Because I know that initially that was based off of discoveries in neuroscience as a model for deep learning.
Yeah. So, yeah, like deep neural networks. So basically, they kind of started, like computers and stuff were like based on the mind, and then people were like, oh, we can actually study the mind through computers. And now like machine learning's less rule based and more like you just give it a load of data and then it makes up its own rules. But now it's got to the point where we don't actually know what its rules are, like we don't know why it's making these decisions, but it makes it interesting.
There's a lot, especially kind of from the philosophy side of my degree, that I find particularly really interesting about it. Especially with, I suppose it's kind of random how it's making its rules and how kind of statistics based all of the making of the rules are. And it's interesting from that perspective of what we can learn kind of from human reasoning and, what we can learn about human reasoning from there and all the related things about that. One conversation that really annoys me is the one about whether AI will take over, because I think a lot of people make a lot of claims about it and it's quite clear that they just don't actually know how far computers can really go, because there's only so much that a computer can model in the first place. There's a whole set of numbers that a computer just will not be able to actually compute for you. So in the first place, it's already limited in terms of the maths that it can do. And a lot of people don't seem to appreciate that when talking about these things, and clearly just don't really know what they're talking about. And I think because it's artificial intelligence, right? Like, intelligence is just one facet of the human mind as well, which I think a lot of people do make the jump that it's the entirety of the human mind. And while we can get a computer to do a lot of things like natural language processing and image processing that humans also do as well, there are also, this idea of basic instincts within us as well that evolved through countless genetic processes, the ones that allowed our ancestors to be able to hunt and kill and eat properly, that got us to where we are today. And I suppose modelling that within a computer as well is, kind of that gut instinct feeling, or the heuristics that we used to govern our decision making on before developing reason, is something that I'm not sure if it can be done, but I'm open to being proved wrong on that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because humans are social. Like, our entire evolution has been defined by how social we are, right? And computers, how can they be social? I don't know. That's one thing. And then also, so my lecturer did his entire PhD on C. elegans, right? Which are these tiny little, wormy things.
Wormy things.
That's what they are.
Finally,
wormy
something
things.
I can understand.
And they only have 302 neurons in their brain, right? And yet, even though we have technically the processing capabilities of simulating a human mind, we can't even simulate properly a C. elegans brain, which has 302 neurons, let alone a human's that has billions. So I don't think people need to worry. We're way off. I don't know, some kind of
revolution
takeover. Yeah.
I think the one thing to watch out for in that regard would be when quantum computing finally takes off, because for whatever reason that's going to be so much more powerful. But I haven't looked enough into that to be able to give you a sensible answer as to how long it might be until that takes off, and whether that will then cause the AI overlords to take over.
Yeah. I would literally talk about this for the whole hour, so maybe we should.
Another time.
It's interesting though.
I know. It is. The module I'm doing, I'm I don't know if the lecturer is also, because he brings up a lot of philosophical things. We covered the Chinese room experiment, which I did in A-level philosophy, which was interesting. Do you know about that?
Yes.
No, I don't know much about philosophy, no.
It's just basically the basis is that something can look intelligent without it actually being intelligent.
That's what?
The basis. So, okay. Chinese room.
This is getting so philosophical, but it's great. Okay.
I love it. Okay, Chinese room experiment. I'll be real quick. Okay. There's a guy in this room, and it has two little letterboxes. People will put a Chinese symbol, character or whatever, through the letterbox, and then there's a guy in the room that will take the character and then look through a rule book and then give the correct output, response, and he'll put it through the output box, and then from the outside it looks like this clever machine that can answer any question, but actually it's just a guy following a rule book, so it looks intelligent but isn't.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think with psychology in particular, I would be controversial enough to class it as a science, and I don't like the level of disrespect it gets from a lot of people who do similar degrees to mine.
Thank you.
And two, because of it being such a young science, I think that's why you see a lot more statistics and philosophy kind of come into it, and it's studied than in other sciences as well, even though in most of theoretical physics at the moment, there's just as much statistics and philosophy actually involved.
So, moving on from questions of the universe, I thought we'd kick off this week by talking about a topic which is going around in the mainstream media this week, about how veganism can potentially, according to this study which has problems we'll talk about in a minute, saying that so people that have like vegan diets are 43% more at risk of bone fracture. So, as you can imagine, because I've become vegetarian over the past few months, my mum this week was like, have you seen this article about how vegans get bone problems? And I was like, okay. But I was enlightened by some articles that James sent me into the fact that the study that they used for this data or whatever are actually like really not representative and stuff. Do you want to talk a bit more about that, James?
Yeah, I'd love to. So effectively, the study was saying that it's potentially due to the fact that there are some nutrients that vegans are at risk more of managing to be deficient in than in a meat eater diet, which to some extent is true. It is quite easy especially if you're kind of new into it, to not get the correct balance of these nutrients. But then there were a number of other things in the study as well which seemed a bit questionable, in terms of because of the fact that vegans in general have lower weight than people who eat meat. This means that for people with lower weight, in some parts of the body, you are more likely to get fractures. But then there's the caveat to this, which is if you're overweight or obese, you are actually more likely to get ankle fractures instead. So take that for whatever you will. It was very questionable. The study didn't even give a particularly good answer as to which of the nutrients it could be that that could cause the fractures, because naturally you'd assume it was calcium. But calcium in a vegan diet, I think, is one of those things. I think along with protein, it's kind of one of these questions that you'll regularly get, is how do you get your protein or how do you get your calcium, when actually I think that's because we've been so trained, like from birth in our society basically, and into thinking and educated into thinking that dairy and meat are where you get calcium and protein respectively, whereas it's not actually the case, that they're the only places. You can get them in from a number of plant-based sources like nuts, for example. Even kale, actually, surprisingly, has more calcium in it than the milk does. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I didn't know that until a few weeks back, but I'm glad to see that my kale intake is helping my bones and teeth. So effectively, there's another issue with calcium as well, which is when you actually get it from cow's milk and you have other animal proteins in the cow's milk as well, because of it being acidic, your body's naturally going to try and neutralize it by taking calcium from your bones and neutralizing it from there. So in most circumstances, calcium won't even be gained in the body via drinking cow's milk, which again is one of these things in terms of education, educating about nutrition, which we've kind of been misled on in most places. Then afterwards, there was the potential suggestion that a lack of B12 and vitamin D could be what causes these bone fractures. But even then, I think that's more of an auxiliary function of vitamin D and vitamin B12, which isn't as prevalent as its other functions, but I could be wrong on that, admittedly. And two, I think a lot of vegans anyway will definitely have B12 supplements. I suppose if you're doing it sensibly, which I am, and that's why on my desk currently I am looking at my vitamin D and B12 supplements respectively. Two, vitamin D you can get from mushrooms, and I think it's one of the first things I learnt when being vegan, which was I've cut out so much of my diet already that I can't really be bothered to be a fussy eater anymore. So I just ate whatever and ended up liking a lot of things, to be fair. I suppose there's that whole other debate, which we can get into if you want, with regards to whether a proper diet should have supplements. But yeah, that's kind of where I felt that statistically the study was lacking in places.
Yeah, I feel like as well, what I sort of thought about it was there's lots of people over the past sort of like 50 years or so, like our diet, well, even since the 1950s, our diets have got supposedly like a lot less healthy, especially in like America where they have like not that much regulation on food standards and stuff. And I feel like you could even say, you know, for them saying, oh, vegans don't get enough nutrients and they need this and that. Well, there's a lot of people who eat bad things or eat junk food that don't get the right nutrients and stuff anyway, you know. And also there's people like that take lots of people take vitamin B and D12 because a lot of people, whatever they are, vitamin D and B12, that's it. A lot of people, you know, have like, what's the word, deficiencies of those vitamins anyway, so I don't think it's necessarily something that you can highlight just as like, oh, vegans are more likely to break bones, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, completely. I agree with you. Yeah, that I can't really think of much more there is to go into with the study apart from, you know, if I did have the data which the study was done upon, I would like to see for myself whether if you fed it in a few algorithms, you could see how significant the veganism actually is according to the computer. Whether there is enough data there as well, and the way that, well, when the data's from, which was from the early noughties and the early to mid 2010s, in terms of the 10 to 15 year period that the question, well, from originally when people talked about their diets to when they then talked about bone fractures. I think a lot more has come out in terms of scientific research about whether about the nutrients that we need in our body and about where we can get these nutrients, information which we didn't necessarily have when this study was first being done. And as well, when the bone fractures were being talked about at the end, there was no question really done into how the bone fractures were got. We don't know if all these vegans were extreme skateboarders or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's another place where the statistics are a little bit suspect in places.
I think it's as well, just I feel like at the minute there's so many more things going on in the world, and like if people, like, I don't know why they're trying to sort of start these headlines that like make people be like, oh, veganism's bad. Like, I don't know, I feel like there's more productive ways of having conversations around like supplements and ensuring people on plant-based diets are getting everything they need than just being like, if you're a vegan you are going to break bones. Like, I just feel like it's not helpful, is it?
No, it's not. And you get one of these headlines every so often, which is actually quite easily disprovable. I remember there was a question as whether vegans were getting enough nutrients in the brain, which was done by the BBC last year, which basically quoted a whole load of outdated studies, and new studies had come out since, basically, well, overturning those outdated studies. And I did find it really disappointing that the BBC would lead with such misinformation. But there we are.
Yeah. So how was everybody's week? Abby, why don't you tell us some of the things you've been doing this week, what you've been watching, listening to, anything?
I've been listening to Megan Thee Stallion's new album. It's great. What can I say? Also the AMAs happened, so I've been watching all the performances.
Apparently, people got robbed from. There's a lot of people that got properly like not what they deserved or something. I don't really know much about it this year.
Doja Cat won too, so I'm happy.
Okay.
And then so Megan Thee Stallion performed. Well, Doja as well, but it wasn't anything spectacular. She's done better. But Meg's was great. It was incredible. She can really like dance. I was like, yes. And she performed a song called Body Right. So in the beginning she was like, I love my body, and I was like, oh. But yeah, no. Actually, what I was gonna say about it, right? So there's she starts the album with this song called Shots Fired, right? Sampling a Biggie song about, I think it's called Who Shot Ya, right?
Oh, that's classic.
Basically, exactly. she is completely calling out Tory Lanez, and it's incredible.
Oh, is this the thing? I swear you told me ages ago something about someone getting shot in the foot or something.
Yes,
okay,
exactly. So she
remember.
hasn't addressed it. She hasn't spoken on it because she was going to keep it out of the media because, like, basically she was like, I don't want to, like, perpetuate, oh, black man shooting someone, blah, blah, blah. So, but then basically it came out and then Tory was like, oh, like, I don't even know. He, like, released an album and was, like, trying to make money off of, like, the hysteria around him shooting Meghan, right?
I am going to have to actually look this song up after this now because I know Who Shot You was Biggie Smalls' diss track on Tupac, which then Tupac replied with Hit 'Em Up, or one or the other way round, because those two hated each other.
Oh, I didn't realise they were, like, one after each other.
Yeah, well, it was this huge, like, East Coast versus West Coast beef back in the day, basically, so, yeah, I think for no other reason than they just wanted to show, like, one side was superior to the other. I remember I was in, like, my GCSE year when I was mainly listening to this, and I've not really caught up on East Side rapping until quite recently, actually, and something weirdly that I recognised was the amount of Hamilton lyrics that actually appear in those. Yeah, because Hamilton was heavily inspired by these. So this was where Lin-Manuel Miranda got some of his inspiration from, and what I really love about Hamilton, I suppose that the thing I love most about Hamilton is how it's kind of justified rap music in the eyes of the middle class now, because I think usually there is some sort of prejudice from people like that about it, and, you know, claiming this music is all about kind of sex, drugs and women, whereas when this comes in rock music, which is done predominantly by white people instead, this seems like people are a lot more accepting of it. But there we are. But yeah, so lyrics like Only 19 but my mind is older is actually a Mobb Deep lyric from the song Shook Ones Part 2. So and as a primary example that I can remember off the top of my head. So yeah, the more you know.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah, it was interesting because when I was, like, excited for this album, the artwork's, like, incredible, and then it got released, and because it wasn't this is just like a throwaway song on the album, and then everyone on Twitter was going crazy because they were like, oh my god, she's sampled Biggie, like, it's clearly about him. I literally live for this kind of stuff. Honestly, the best sign, because, you know, I've been listening to Luce knows this, Jack Harlow. I showed her one of his videos, and I was like, it's just gone to his head, like, he's lost it. And so Tory is on the remix for What's Poppin', and one of the lines is, I told him you're not poppin', you're just on the remix. And I was like, oh my god. I was actually really coming for, obviously, like, I can't really read out most of the lyrics on a wholesome podcast such as this one. So you'll have to look it up for yourself.
James, what have you been watching, listening to, whatever?
Well, I suppose it's mainly been kind of listening to music in the background of work for me this week. So I suppose on the topic of diss tracks in particular, I've been listening to a lot of Dizzy Rascal, and anyone who actually knows, like, him from outside the mainstream knows that Wiley, who's known as the godfather of grime, did Wearing My Rolex, and I suppose was most recently in the news for having a straight 9-hour anti-Semitic tirade on Twitter. Those two have an extensive history of just not liking each other. And I remember, so what happened when he was about to release his 6th album was Wiley tweeted out saying, like, I've heard that you've got a track on your album which is basically aimed at me, remove it or I'm going to make this 10-minute diss track on you. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of sad that Dizzy Rascal didn't keep the lyric, because there's a lyric in one of his songs, The Other Side, which is censored out because it references Wiley, and specifically makes a paedophilia accusation against Wiley. So
God.
yeah
Oh my God.
Some people accuse Wiley of this, and Dizzy has put it in on Twitter before, saying, I've never seen a nonce more protected than Savile, which is his direct quote on the matter. I didn't
Oh my god.
yeah I didn't realise this
didn't
was
know
the lyric.
this.
Yeah It's kind of
I need to look into
yeah.
this.
So in The Other Side, it was just censored. So I listened to that album for a long time, that song specifically, and heard that. Thought it was about Wiley because of course the Godfather, because it starts Why's the Godfather. And then when I finally saw him live, and he was performing it live, the whole lyric came out, which was Why's the Godfather touching on the kids again. And I was just like finished for a good like moment. I was busy enjoying the song, singing along at that live event. Then I heard that and I was like, pardon. Sorry, what was this? I'm kind of sad he didn't keep the lyric in the album, because Wiley's diss tracks against various people, because whenever he feels like he's not relevant enough anymore, he does just like go on a tirade against someone, either on Twitter, like that's why he went against Stormzy earlier this year. His diss tracks on the most part, his diss tracks on the most part are very good, and I would probably love a good 10-minute diss track that he had on Dizzy Rascal. And among that is like what I'll mainly listen to is that type of rap music, mainly like the UK kind of grime scene music. So on the board as well, I've usually when I have written for music, it has actually just been about Dizzy Rascal music. And so other than that, just similar music along those lines. But then I do love a bit of synthwave as well. So listening to I can't remember what the album's called, but the artist is called Washed Out. And if anyone's into that sort of synthwave music, I would heartily recommend his stuff.
Abby, you and Alex always make me watch the diss tracks after you've had too many drinks, but what's the ones that we always watch? I can't remember. Isn't one of them Stormzy, right?
Yeah, we watch we don't listen to the Wiley ones, we only listen to Stormzy's ones.
And Alex loses her mind.
Yeah, but because we lose our minds at the
thing about his mum.
Flew your mum Terminal 4 line. That's the line we lose our minds at. I think we wound that back quite a few times, didn't we? And we watched on YouTube these two guys reacting to Still Disappointed. That's what a night drinking with us looks like.
If you want to dig into Wiley's extensive history of diss tracks, then I would recommend. So I think there's an album called The War Report, which is by Logan Sama, who's just a DJ on. He was a DJ on either Radio 1 or Kiss Radio at the time. I think it was Kiss. And basically every Monday evening, what would seemingly happen at this time in around 2006 is Wiley and his friends were going against this crew called The Movement, who I'm not sure. So I think the one from them who's had the most mainstream success is Devlin, who did a cover of Watchtower, I think, with Ed Sheeran a number of years ago. So he was in that. He wasn't the main member of it. I suppose Wretch 3-2 as well, who did Don't Go a number of years ago. That's kind of his most mainstream thing as well. And then you've got Getz, who's just always been kind of diehard grime, and I think a lot of people would call him one of the best of all time in terms of his music. Yeah, when those two crews were going against each other, the music that comes from there on both sides actually is really good, and in classic kind of UK style, it's really visceral. You don't really have an old-fashioned diss track against Wiley unless you have, one, a nonce accusation, and two, an accusation that he's a coke addict. I think one of my favourite lyrics from Devlin's diss track has to be, so his song's called Extra Extra. I would recommend listening to that. I think one of my favourite lyrics from that is something like... you bang girls that are 15, I'm only 17 and I still wouldn't do that.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
It's just one sample of like the level of savagery that you will get from diss tracks there, which I don't, apart from when Tupac and Biggie really went for it, and I think with Hit 'Em Up especially, just basically being
that's like known for it,
yeah,
isn't it?
that's just known for just how absolutely furious it is as an attack. So I think apart from that one, I think the UK kind of diss tracks are by far like just so visceral, and just, you know, they really, it's not even like they just go for the one person, they just go for all their mates as well. And all of the main battle of Wiley and Ghetto versus well, and also all the sub battles like Scorcher and Frisco and et al. Is really good listen if you just really need to get out some anger.
Luce, what about you?
I haven't been listening to anything new this week, but I did start kind of on the philosophical stream things. I did start watching The Good Place.
The Good Place is like one of my favourite shows of all time.
Have you seen it, James?
No, and I think I kind of refuse to see it because having like studied so much in terms of ethics, I will probably be disappointed no matter what happens.
It's okay, like, because I've started watching it before, and I don't like Kristen Bell, first of all. Like, I just don't like her.
Right.
And then it's okay. I've watched like a season and a half of it, but I just feel like I don't know, like I skip bits of it because I get bored. Like I find it quite.
I don't understand how you do this.
How
do you watch something for the first time and skip bits?
Because I get
just
bored.
go on your phone if you're bored.
I'm on my phone as well. I'm on my phone and I'm skipping it because I can't.
That's really worrying. You know what? I feel sorry for Ollie. I would get so mad at you if you did that.
I can't help it. Like I just don't have an attention span if they're having a conversation and it's first of all it's two characters I don't like, I will skip it. And this is with anything. And if it's a conversation that I don't think is important to the story, I'll skip it because I just get bored.
How do you know what's important to the story if you haven't seen it yet? How do you know that it's not going to come up? Listen, this is the whole thing with The Good Place is that stuff comes up again and they like learn and stuff.
But I'm just
and then no, absolutely not having that.
It's predictable as well. Like I was like, spoiler alert for anybody, just skip ahead. But I was like, of course this is The Bad Place. Like it's just obvious.
Yeah, but that's season 1.
Yeah,
there's like 4 seasons.
I know, but I was just like, this is just like obvious. Like I don't know. I know it's one of your favourite shows, but I'm very sorry. I wouldn't rate it.
I think.
You know what? Sadly, I don't think a lot of people do.
Yeah, I think I know a good book in terms of like an introductory exploration into ethics is The Elements of Moral Philosophy by James Rachels. So if anyone's a fan of The Good Place and wants some further reading, or if anyone just prefers books to unlikable characters, then go for it. I recommend that.
Interesting. I think, like, I don't mind bits of philosophy. Like in history, we do bits of philosophy, but the whole, like when they talk about Kant all the time and stuff, I'm just like, I don't care. Like I don't know.
Kant is probably the most overrated philosophy. No, not philosophy. Yeah, overrated philosopher in the history of philosophy. He certainly had his influences, and it's basically just because he made some fat 600-page book. I suppose a broken clock is right twice a day, right? If you're going to pump out that much content, then at least some of it. I suppose it was influential in terms of the way that people did philosophy, like just after. But basically, everyone doing philosophy just after was basically saying, in the politest way and scholarliest way possible, that he's a clown.
Right. I mean, I love Descartes, right? Just simply because he would send his stuff to people and they would go, oh no, I don't agree with this, you're wrong because of that. And then he would go, nope, I'm right. And then just publish it anyway. And I was like, you know what? You've got to be pretty, self-assured to do that. I love that.
There's some significant BDE at play.
Exactly. Rene, go for it.
I think my favourite, if I had to choose one, would be Gottlob Frege, because mainly he kind of was the person who started the whole kind of like philosophical movements that I'm into, and also just like his reviews that he's got of his lecturing and just apparently his personality as a person. When it says stuff like he would show dry wit and even bitter sarcasm in lectures, just as an excerpt from his Wikipedia page, I just think is such a mood.
I mean,
Nice.
I like Foucault if you class him as a philosopher.
I would, yeah.
But we'll move on from my dislike of The Good Place. I'm very sorry, Abby.
It's okay.
One last thing. I don't like short episodes of things. I know I said that I like to skip things, but if it's a short episode, I'm more likely to skip it.
How many times have you watched Friends?
Yeah, but Friends is different.
Same episode length, and they're both comedies.
Is it? Okay. Yeah, I know, but it doesn't have the 90s appeal of Friends as well.
Have you guys watched Peep Show by any chance?
No.
No, wow.
No.
I think
I know.
It's quite an interesting one. I personally really like it and would recommend it to you both, but I have the slight feeling as well that there is a chance that you might hate it. So
Okay.
go at your own peril.
People have said to watch that in the past. I feel like it's one of those classic programs that it's like got a cult following, hasn't
Definitely.
it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, let's talk a bit about veganism.
Yes, please.
How easy do you think it is as a student to be vegan? Like, do you think it's more difficult as a student or easier or whatever?
I think it's probably easier than it is in the most part because if you're going on campus, I think a lot of campuses are going to accommodate for the diet. Like in the Dirty Duck and Canopy here at Warwick, right? I think the statistics I've been quoted at by people who work there is like about a third of the menu at least has like veggie/vegan meals. So
good.
yeah, definitely it's really helpful in terms of that and being aware. And the Duck even has a vegan drinks menu because I think that's something that people don't necessarily realise is that because of the way that certain beers are filtered and so forth using fish skins, they technically aren't vegan. So Carling, for example, is the big one that isn't. So yeah, I can't live out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That sounds grim though. Why do they do that? Like,
Probably
Yeah,
because
and like
the chemicals.
wines and stuff as well, right?
Wines as
Yeah.
well, yeah. In terms of I think that will use fish bones instead. But
Right.
Lucy, your face is a real picture at the moment. Having
I'm
heard
having an
that news.
existential crisis now.
No, like when my mum at home is making a spag bowl, she
Mhm.
puts red wine in the sauce, and she has to be careful. She has to make sure she gets like a vegetarian red wine for my sister, because
Mhm.
otherwise, not vegetarian.
Mm. Yeah. So on that front, I think it's also easy as well because you'll be made aware of that. I suppose on a student budget as well. I'm not so sure because when it comes to living day to day, I don't use a maintenance loan. I just use my money from work, but I can afford it still. And I haven't fractured any bones yet, guys. Or my brain
Good to
hasn't
know.
melted, or whatever the BBC and the Sun claim will happen. So yeah, I managed through it, and I suppose because of how popular it is among a student body as well. From statistics I've seen, I'd probably wager a guess that 20 to 25% at least are either vegan or vegetarian. It wouldn't surprise me if that number went closer to 30% after that, because these are statistics I've seen pre-pandemic, and a lot of people have gone up. Well, a lot of people have got into it since the pandemic as well, and I think that because of that, you're more likely to find vegan friends and be able to cook with them and go out with them generally, and just I suppose celebrate your niche diets together, because I suppose when vegans meet up, right, it's not the only thing they talk about is not look how much better our diets are and look at how cool our views towards animal rights are. Aren't we people of the future, right? I think it's more this appreciation of kind of the creativity that then goes into certain vegan foods, that because of the constraints that are obviously there is more creativity that then has to be done, especially in foods that kind of try to emulate more meaty flavors. So I think, then after that and appreciating the food, from my experience of eating with other vegans, it's usually just conversing about life in general instead, because I wouldn't eat with someone unless I wanted to speak to them about more things than just veganism.
I think as well, people that are always like, being vegetarian or vegan is so expensive. Like, obviously different for people who are literally on like the poverty line and can't afford, buy like whatever's cheapest, completely different. But for students, like, I think I save money by not buying meat and stuff, because obviously corn, I don't know whether the corn stuff is always vegan, but I assume most of it is, right?
I'm actually not sure. I never really go for corn. For me personally, I am an absolute fiend for tofu. I absolutely love it, and
Really?
I love it. Genuinely. I think I'm going to throw out the bold take here, which is if you don't like tofu, you've just never had it cooked for you correctly. Because I remember having it at Bar Fusion once and thinking it was absolutely dreadful. But there are certain recipes, like if you get it from the local Chinese, a good salt and pepper tofu, or absolutely delightful. But yeah, so I'm not so sure about corn. I know some of it will use egg in places, and egg whites and stuff like that. So I think that's the only thing that really goes into corn that isn't vegan.
I think generally though, like most veggie stuff or vegan stuff, like a lot of the frozen, so the corn mince that we all love, you can get like what 5-6 meals out of that at least, and then if you buy beef mince, then that's 1 or 2 meals, and I just think generally you do save money being not eating meat. But on the topic of tofu,
are we going to have an argument?
We might. Abby, do you remember last year you bought a block of it, right, to try it?
I really wanted to give it a go, right? And oh my god, so I just the thing is, I was like, because I like to make chicken ramen, right? I was like, I'll make a tofu ramen. So I tried to like, I think, I don't know, I think it's more absorbent than chicken, so maybe it just absorbed too much soy sauce, and I only like a little bit of soy sauce because I'm quite picky. I think that was it. I don't know, maybe I didn't cook it for as long or didn't season it correctly. I know it was my fault. I know it was my fault. But,
yeah, but I had...
that was hard to eat, that was.
I had that Wagamama's, and I ordered the kids tofu ramen to try it, didn't I? Like a few months ago. And I thought it was disgusting. Like, it was soggy.
Yeah, this is why cooking tofu well can be quite difficult, because tofu is naturally like a very wet, like it'll be very wet, like you have to drain it once you've got it out. And so what I'd recommend doing, so when I made ramen with my girlfriend, what we did was, if you put the tofu in corn flour, then because of the wetness is really going to easily stick to the corn flour, and also if you add a few spices to that as well, like you could add some paprika, cumin, or some like hot chili powder as well, whatever's to your fancy there. And then if you fry it up in some oil in that, then you get like, you can make sure that the tofu's really crispy, and then obviously it's a bit softer on the inside as well, but it's got, you know, nice little bite to it then, and adding that to the ramen. That would be kind of my recommendation, or just like frying it on a high heat for a long time. If you're wanting to do it for a stir fry, put it in first, fry it up, make sure it's browning so that you can see that it's getting crispier, because I completely agree, soggy tofu is just one of the worst things in existence. And that's why, you know, when people ask, can you eat tofu raw? I mean, yes, if I wanted to have a bad culinary experience, I would, but I don't want that, so I won't.
Okay, that's good to know. Maybe we should try that when we go back to uni, Abby.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay. So kind of leading on from that, what are the best vegan food products that you can buy, like from any supermarket or whatever?
Any supermarket.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to talk about kind of specific to outlets and restaurants as well, but supermarket wise, I think it depends where you're at in terms of being vegan, and two, what I think it depends on how healthy you want to be as well. So for me, it will usually be a lot of vegetables, obviously, and as well a fair amount of bread, because vegan diets can end up being quite carb heavy, because that kind of compensates in some places for the meats as well. And obviously your usual standard pasta and noodles and rice. The one thing to watch out for is with noodles in particular, obviously you can get egg noodles, and I remember one time last year buying wheat noodles, but it still had like some flipping egg powder in, and I just don't know what they were playing at there, but there we go. I mainly use rice noodles these days, to be honest. and yeah, rice obviously is vegan, and so is pasta for the most part, unless it's freshly made, in which case it will use milk and eggs. And as well, I'll usually buy like 1 or 2 packs of tofu because, like as said, like I am an absolute fiend for it. And so if you're kind of transitioning, then I would recommend the vegan meats because it's impressive how much they emulate the taste of actual meat. To be fair, I still have them from time to time, and especially kind of as a pub lunch, like a Beyond Meat burger is really, really good. I would recommend nuts as well, just as like a good snack, and even chocolate bourbons. They're vegan as well. I didn't realize this until a little way into being vegan, but yeah, there are a whole load of snacks that you wouldn't think were vegan that just accidentally are, and I think knowing which ones are accidentally vegan is also a big help financially, because if it's being marketed as vegan, then they tend to try and up the price a little bit. So that's something to also watch out for when at the supermarket. So really, for me, I've not actually used this new Asda aisle yet, even though like my nearest big shop is an Asda, mainly because of this reason. But because like I just mainly go for either the accidental vegan stuff or and tofu basically as well. But yeah, apart from that, I suppose there are specific vegetables that you could go for in terms of what you want to either bulk out meals or in terms of like actual nutrients that you'll get, which I suppose that would be an extensive list, so I will not go into it here. But I suppose protein wise, mushrooms and spinach are both two very good things. And something in terms of just managing to bulk out a meal where you might use chicken instead, a good vegetable for that is actually cauliflower, which you may not actually originally expect, but cauliflower is very, very good, very delicious. I'd recommend if you look at Mob Kitchen, which is a good website for recipes in general, they've got a really good popcorn cauliflower recipe, which is kind of meant to emulate the type of sauce that you'll get on chicken wings. And so I've cooked that once, and that is absolutely delicious.
What about cheese? That's the question
we're all thinking. Vegan cheese, yes, yes. So the thing was when in my vegan journey, so it was basically the summer before uni. I was just like, well, I had it in the back of my mind for a number of years, especially in terms of environmental impact. So I decided I'd go veggie at uni. But the thing was that one, I met my vegan friend Nicola at uni, and I suppose she proved to me that vegan food didn't actually have to taste really bland and just be salads. So that really helped. I think that's probably one of the main things that holds people back is they don't realise that vegan food can actually taste really nice. And two, I never really ate much in terms of eggs and cheese anyway. So, I never really liked eating them individually. So my input on vegan cheese is not going to be the best one. I like the vegan cheese on Papa John's pizzas. I am more than willing to accept that this may well be Stockholm Syndrome. But, yeah, like most vegan cheese is absolutely vile. And I will fully admit that it can be very tasteless. And so, but it's something weird for me because I've never had this experience really of being the true fiend for cheese instead of tofu instead. So it's it's an experience that I've not had. So I don't know. I find it quite foreign as a concept. But it is just like a widespread phenomenon, and I suppose it's something that you kind of have to get over eventually, as you do with all these foods that you leave behind, I suppose.
I never even used to like cheese, and then when I got to uni, I got put onto cheese, so I would have been fine before. I literally didn't like it. I would have pizzas without cheese, and now I literally can't live without it. Isn't that a bit depressing?
I suppose from an addiction standpoint, yes. I mean, I don't really want to make too many like judgments on diet because I can't be bothered. Like, it's an argument that could last for ages, and I quite like the friendly working relationship that we all have on the board at the moment, and I don't particularly want to ruin it before we don't have to work with each other anymore. So we'll leave it there.
I'm not one of those people that can just eat blocks of cheese, I will say that. And I don't like anything other than like cheddar and mozzarella. So maybe I'm not the worst. I don't know. You literally just eat cheese from the bag, Abbey, which scares me.
Oh my god. That scares me as well, I'm sorry.
I can't believe you outed me like that. Mozzarella. The thing is with mozzarella, it's quite a mild cheese. It's not
I don't
very
think
offensive,
it is.
it?
I think it's quite strong.
I think it's like basically tasteless.
No, it makes me feel sick. Like, one of the things that makes me feel sick is when cheese has water on it, and when mozzarella has like
this
juice.
Is dried mozzarella.
I know, but still, the thought of it makes me feel ill.
When I do get like fresh mozzarella, I do have to just kind of really block out the fact that it's sitting in like a puddle of its own, like.
That is disgusting.
But I'm not very like adventurous with cheese. Like, my mum will sit down like at Christmas and stuff, she'll have like a cheese board with biscuits and she'll be like putting blue cheese on, and I'm like, that's too far.
I did have, when we went to the Clarendon, have you been to the Clarendon, James, and had the vegan burgers?
I've not tried the vegan burgers there, but I have been inside the Clarendon.
They're good. They're really good. And they put vegan cheese on it, and it was really good. I don't know what it was. It was like grated. It was kind of green, which you could tell it wasn't real cheese, obviously. But I thought that was nice. So whatever that was, I would have.
I honestly can't give any sort of opinion here. Like, I usually go without the vegan cheese that's on vegan burgers, just purely because of like when I did eat meat or had the option to eat. Well, I suppose I still have the option. It's not like I'm gonna die if I eat it, but I never really ate it anyway, so I just kind of continue on that trend. Yeah,
that's fair enough. What are the best like vegan takeaways? I mean, you've already mentioned Papa John's, but like, what are the best vegan restaurants, especially around Warwick, I guess, for anybody from Warwick that's listening?
Yeah, I think big respect needs to be given now to Greg's, and I think that the whole kind of revolution of these big chain restaurants giving vegan options was whenever some mad lad in a Greg's boardroom said, hey, what if we introduced a vegan sausage roll? Whoever had that idea had no idea of the global phenomenon that he was about to unleash. Because the year after, the next Veganuary, when they announced their steak bake, they were on it again. The vegan steak bake's also really good. Every other company as well was on it. KFC was on it. McDonald's is only now just catching up. Burger King was on it at that time as well. It was incredible. So Nando's is now on it. They've made their plant-based burger. So big respect has to be given to Greg's, and our friend Lauren, obviously, because she works at Greg's, she can get them for me half price as well. So that makes them even better.
Incredible. And
so I'm trying to think of other than that, what really competes on that level. I suppose one place that is only really in Bristol, London and Brighton is a place called Uwe Vegan Burger, which is also incredible and I love. And other than that, in the Warwick area, Temperance, actually, the coffee shop, because the Garden Shed Cafe, which used to be an all-vegan place, went under because of the pandemic. I think Temperance kind of bought them out or something along those lines, and now Temperance have a lot more vegan options as well. Warwick Street Kitchen, which is more kind of your guys' ends in the north, that also has some very good vegan options there as well. Other than that, I can't necessarily think of too many places in Leamington Spa where I'd say there really are like standout options, apart from kind of the usual places that you may be able to think of. I mean, before Spoons had to reduce their menu, the vegan gourmet burger from there was really good. I also want to credit, as well as the genius who thought up of the vegan sausage roll, I also want to give credit to the genius who thought, hey, let's put avocado in a burger, because that also is actually really, really delicious, and I am all here for it.
I'll tell you where it's not good for vegan in Leamington. What's that place? Is it Coat Brasserie, the one by Nando's?
Yes.
Around there, the fancy one. They don't do any vegan or vegetarian options right now.
That sucks.
Or maybe they do goat's cheese salad, but obviously that's not vegan.
I think I remember you talking about this in the previous podcast.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
I had to
Is
have
this
fish.
when you had fish?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't like goat's cheese at all. So I was like, I can't have this. But there was like 2 women behind me, and they were gluten-free and vegan, and they were like, what can we eat? And they were like, nothing.
Oh my god.
I was like, this is so bad. Like, it's bad, isn't it? How they don't do anything. I don't know whether it's just right now because of reduced menu or whatever, but I was like, how can you not have anything that's vegan?
I think it's more just from, not even from like the shock of like an ethical standpoint of just being inclusive. It's more from a business standpoint of like, you're losing customers. Like, why wouldn't you have at least one option, right? Usually, when you go to places like Procaffeinate's actually a really good example of this, in terms of if you do have some sort of intolerance, just asking the staff there, they can, the chef's very adaptable, but I suppose they've got probably less of a demand than other places do.
Yeah.
So they're more able to do that, but yeah.
Can I say something really random, but it's made me laugh this week?
Yeah,
it's really not to do with anything we've talked about. So basically, Gossip Girl has been taken off Netflix soon, right?
Right.
And I'm selling a Gossip Girl box set on Depop, and it's been on for like a year. And in the past 2 days, I've had 7 people messaging me about the box set. Because it's going off Netflix.
You should hike the price.
I know, this girl was like, can you do it for £4? I was like, I'm not doing a big ass box set for £4. Are you joking? But yeah, it wasn't to do with anything, but I just thought it was an interesting thing.
I never finished that, you know.
Are you joking?
No, I know who it is though. I got that spoiler.
Have you seen that meme when he's like, Gossip Girl?
What, the one we like or a different one?
When he's like XO, XO, Gossip Girl.
God.
Anyway, yeah, has anybody got any final recommendations for this week? Anything vegan, James, that you think our listeners should go out and buy this week?
I think everyone should go out, find some sort of like tofu recipe. Mob Kitchen's a great place for this. You can find salt and pepper tofu recipes. I had a good teriyaki tofu this week, which was really nice. I think everyone should go out, try their best to fry up some tofu properly, and give it a good go, because I think the prejudice against tofu is a bit too much for me, and I think we could do with less of it.
Good.
Nice.
What about you, Abbey?
The Richmond meat-free sausages.
Yeah,
those are really good, actually.
Are they vegan?
Yes, they are. I had them.
Yeah, I think so.
I had them for the first time a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, if you fry them up properly, I'd recommend frying them instead of putting them in the oven, because like ovens can be very temperamental in terms of student places. So when I had them in the oven, they weren't necessarily as good, but when I fried them properly, they were really nice, really nice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I went to McDonald's the other day and I had a veggie deluxe, which was very good.
That's my sister's order.
Yeah, I don't know whether I've got anything to recommend. No. Right. Well, thank you for coming on the show, James.
My pleasure.
So make sure you give James a follow on Twitter. It's J_Palmer2, but we'll link everything below. And also give the Boar Film a follow if you want to write. If you're at Warwick, you want to write and ask about films, message him. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to the 10th episode of My Unfiltered 20s. Remember, if you'd like to come on in the future to talk about anything, we'd love to have you on, so get in touch and make sure you follow us on all our social media accounts.
Bye.
Bye.